Other Worlds, classic, good girl art, science fiction, digest-sized magazine. Other Worlds was edited by Ray Palmer. It was published by Clark Publishing Company in Evanston, Illinois. And it was a seminal science fiction magazine at its time. It started, the first issue was in 1949. It ran 31 issues. And that's the first series. Then there was a later second series, which I'll explain. But the first series are these issues. They have great, beautiful spines on the early issues. The later issues in the 20s are a little thinner in thickness. They don't have the thick beauty of the early issues, but they have the same amount of pages, basically about 160 or so pages. So while it's just probably the better grade of paper, the early issues had a pulp paper on them. And we're going to look at the Other Worlds now. Just to mention, it started issue number one in November 1949. They had the issue number usually on the cover, but also on the spine, and they had a month and year date. And all of the issues had that. The early issues had the number and the month and date on the top of the spine, and the later issues had the month and date and the issue number on the back, on the bottom of the spine. And these were edited by Ray Palmer, who was enamored of the Richard Shaver spiritualistic, fantastic. Some people say it was hoax. Some people say he was a person who had some mental psychological problems, and he put these dreams together into these stories about Lemuria and people that lived underground. And so it was like kind of a borderline science fiction. Some of the manuscripts were probably cleaned up, or maybe even written mostly entirely by Ray Palmer. Ray Palmer is a very interesting guy. He was a dwarf, and he was a guy who was very connected into science fiction in a lot of ways, as a writer, as an editor, and even an artist. We'll see later on some of the cover that he did. That's pretty good. But he also understood science fiction talent. He understood magazine publishing, and he was a bit of a genius, actually. Anyway, he also was involved with Fate magazine and all of these other kinds of semi-science, pseudoscience, spiritualistic kind of magazines. And like the Richard Shaver stuff was kind of a cross between that and science fiction. So he put that in Other Worlds along with the regular science fiction. So we're going to look at the issues. I don't have all the issues. There's 31 of them. I have about, I think about 18 of them. And we're going to start with the first issue. This is from November 1949, issue number 1. And it starts off, great good girl art cover. The cover art is by Malcolm Smith. Malcolm Smith was also the art director. And the Richard Shaver story begins the issue. And a lot of the authors aren't really that known. Rog Phillips is one that's is kind of remembered. The covers are just great. Malcolm Smith did some great art. The back covers, are ads for his for Fate magazine, which was the other magazine that he published. Just to show you some of the art, Malcolm Smith did the interior art. This is Richard Shaver's story, The Fall of Lemuria. And Malcolm Smith's art is terrific. These interiors are beautiful. There's a few more I want to show you. Where No Foot Walks. Seven, 11. Nice robot cover art. Another Rog Phillips story by with art by Malcolm Smith. And if I can find it, Venus Troubleshooter by John Wiley. There's a beautiful interior art. That's the first issue of Other Worlds. This is number 2 from January 1950. And the cover, again, by Malcolm Smith. And Malcolm Smith did many of the covers, but also Macaulay did covers, Hannes Bach did covers, and many other famous and well-known and collected artists. In this issue, we have Rog Phillips again, and Malcolm Smith did the interiors along with Bill Terry. Bill Terry did some nice artwork. Son of the Serpent. Very, Other Worlds was very fantastical, science fiction, but also with fantasy, spiritualism. This time, Rog Phillips. The Fatal World. Don't know who these authors are. Gustavus Meyerink. These are old issues. These are 1950. I can't. There's no more. There's no more art. So that's the second issue. Now we shoot ahead to number 5, July 1950, and you're starting to get better authors. Cover again is by Malcolm Smith. Really terrific science fiction spaceship cover with Earth down below. And you're getting A.E. Van Vogt, Ray Bradbury. Again, the spines on these are just that Other Worlds really springs out at you. And again, they still have the advertisements for Fate magazine on the back cover. Inside A.E. Van Vogt, Forrest Ackerman has a story, Atomic Era, William F. Temple, Ray Bradbury. Here's the A.E. Van Vogt story. Atomic Era by Forrest Ackerman. William F. Temple story, illustrated by Hannes Bach. Another nice piece of interior art. These black and white original art would be beautiful to collect and to keep and save. I don't know how much of it is still around, but and I don't see these covers for Other Worlds either. But and this is issue number 6 from September 1960, and it has a Stuart J. Byrne Colossus 3 along with A.E. Van Vogt, William F. Temple, and Peter Dexter. They're advertising books from Shasta Publishers, which was the Korshak exhibit, which ran as an article by Rich Green in the recent issue of Paperback Parade 106, had an article on the Korshak exhibit, and he was the publisher of Shasta Books. He's 98 now. A.E. Van Vogt, Malcolm Smith art. And there's one thing that I noted in here that I want to just show. Another piece of art. But the E. Everett Evans, this is this is signed to Doc Smith, and it says, introducing my favorite good friend and my favorite man of the future, E. Everett Evans. This is his story, published in Other Worlds, that he presented to Doc Smith, who was E. Doc Smith, the author of The Lensman and the Skylark series, one of the famous names in science fiction, one of the great creators of. If you like Star Wars, you got to read his Lensman series. That's where Star Wars came from. Palace of Darkness by Peter Dexter, Bill Terry art, and nice issue, beautiful issue. I'm going to go through these. Number 7, October 1950. Cover is by Malcolm Smith and Arnold Cohn, and you have stories by Frederick Brown, Rog Phillips, and others. This is the cover and contents page. David Gordon, By the Rules. Another beautiful piece of art, interior art. Captain Ham. It's a little hard to read upside down, but Holes in My Head by Rog Phillips, illustrated by Bill Terry. I'm looking for the Frederick Brown. And this is the starting over. John Wiley, Venus Trouble, with the Bill Terry art. And a man named Mars. Now I have to look for, let's see where the Frederick Brown is. Page 30. I just want to show that. The Frolizzy Frogles by Frederick Brown. Hannes Bach did the illustration. Frederick Brown story. So, next issue is number 10, March 1951. It's covered by H.W. Macaulay, and stories by Theodore Sturgeon, David Keller, Ray Palmer, Eric Frank Russell, Frederick Brown with Mac Reynolds, and Willie Lay. So you've got a really good lineup of talent in this issue. Great Macaulay cover. And Last Laugh by Theodore Sturgeon. Bill Terry did the illustration. One of the interior illustrations are just so cool. They're so nice, and they're by a really terrific artist. The Wedding Present. Eye of the Temptress by Ray Palmer, illustrated by Macaulay. And let me see if I can find one more. The next one is one of my favorite. It's number 11. It's the May 1951 issue, and the cover is by Hannes Bach. Great sexy girl with a frog. Cover art, beautiful design. Red Coral by Ray Palmer is a story, but it also has Lester Del Rey, Robert Bloch, Rog Phillips, And all of the covers are, the cover paintings are attributed on the contents page. And the back cover, later on in the issue, the back covers are also attributed. This issue contains Lester Del Rey, Paul Anderson, and Gordon Dixon. E. Everett Evans, who I showed you had it with the signed, his story was signed to Doc Smith. Sidney Bounds, a British science fiction author. Rog Phillips and Ray Palmer. If Ye Have Faith, Lester Del Rey. Bill Terry art. And page 30. I believe, or maybe not. Page 38. Heroes Are Made by Paul Anderson and Gordon Dixon. And this is Ed Cartier illustration. And this is for one of the hookah stories by these two authors, that they're very imitative teddy bear-like aliens who get involved in all kinds of mischief, and they're really charming, wonderful stories. There's even they even wrote, Paul Anderson and Gordon Dixon even wrote some hookah Sherlock Holmes stories where they just imitate whoever or whatever people out of history that they want to, and there's really terrific stories, great fun. And Cartier had that style of humor that went really well with these stories. So that's a nice story, and again, great Hannes Bach cover. Issue number 16, number 14, October 1951, Macaulay cover, and Robert Bloch and Richard Shaver is in here with Journey to Nowhere. On the inside cover now, you're getting, along with the contents page, A. Merritt, Master of Fantasy. Darrell C. Richardson has written an article about, and they continue doing articles on famous science fiction and fantasy authors with a photo of them, and then it's continued the article in the back of the magazine. Just want to see what Shaver's on 122.
Can we see the front cover?
And Bloch is 84, yeah. I just want to show. Robert Bloch, the end of, oops, that didn't sound good. These are old magazines, they are very delicate. The End of Science Fiction by Robert Bloch. And Journey to Nowhere by Richard Shaver. And the cover art is by H.W. Macaulay, one of his great good girl art. Girl with a gun and a little guy. Number 17 from March 1952 is contains stories by Eric Frank Russell, Mac Reynolds. Malcolm Smith did the cover art. And the cover art is for this story by S.J. Byrne, which I cannot even pronounce, so I'm not going to try. But inside editorial, and Macaulay did the interior art for this story also, the lead story. Number 18, The Golden Guardsman by S.J. Byrne, another one by him. Malcolm Smith did the cover. J.T. McIntosh also had a story in that issue. Here's the issue. The spines are the same up to this point. Back covers just have other ads now. It's a pulpy digest. Malcolm Smith did the cover art. The Golden Guardsman by with Bill Terry art. More interior artwork. The Garden of Eden. And that's by Joe Tillinson, and he did some nice work. He did some really nice work in this magazine. Now we're getting to the thinner issues. You'll notice this is number 22, and it's from October 52. So this is April 52, so it's the same year, but you can see that the design has changed. The issues are thinner, but they're not, because it's the same amount of pages. It's 161 pages. It's just the paper is a little bit better, a little bit thinner. And this is issue number 2, October 52, and you have a Richard Shaver story of an article by L. Sprague de Camp. And this one does not, at this point, they do not tell you who did the cover art, but I guess I'm pretty sure that it's Macaulay. And on the inside, they're also doing articles on major science fiction and fantasy authors. This is number 6, and it's on L. Sprague de Camp, who is featured in the magazine. And generally, that's what they do. They the person has the lead story or the major article in the magazine, and sometimes both. They'll do the write-up of them, a bio and a little bibliography, which is kind of nice. And I'll let you know. The Naked Goddess by S.J. Byrne. More great interior artwork. And so we're going to get to the rest of these issues. This is number 25 from January 53, and Eric Frank Russell is the featured author on the bio. Front cover was by Macaulay. The back cover is by Hans Bach. So there's the front cover by Macaulay, and the back cover by Hans Bach, which I actually like better. They should have put that on the front cover, but I don't know why. It's a little too cartoony, too fantasy oriented, and you have a beautiful girl on the cover, so that's what they probably wanted to do. Eric Frank Russell is the featured author. Here's a photo of him with a write-up, and it's his story, Somewhere a Voice, which was would be the lead story in an ace paperback. Great. This is a great story, and that book is 7 stories in it from Ace. It's in the F series. They're all great stories. And this is also Joe Tillinson illustration, really nice, nicely done. There's interior illustrations. I really like the interior illustrations. Some of these are really. There's the Richard Shaver, but Beyond the Barrier, Part 3 by Richard Shaver, and the artwork is by Charles. It looks like Charles Hornstein. So that's that one. Number 26, February 53. William F. Temple, Robert Moore Williams, L. Sprague de Camp, Richard Shaver, and a story disguised by Donald A. Wollheim. Malcolm Smith did the cover. J. Allen St. John did the back cover. So there's a Malcolm Smith cover of the Worlds, and J. Allen St. John back cover. And so they credit William F. Temple as the featured author, and Field of Battle by William F. Temple is the lead-off story, and Robert Moore Williams, The Night the General Left Us. Number 27, March 1953, contains stories by L. Sprague de Camp, Robert Moore Williams, Raymond A. Palmer, Tedrick by E. Doc Smith. The cover art is Robert Gibson Jones, and the back cover is Hannes Bach. So this Robert Gibson Jones is the cover artist. March 1953 issue. And Hannes Bach back cover, which I would have used for the cover. It was just terrific. Bach was one of my favorite illustrators, and he's really amazing. This issue, they highlight Edward E. Smith, or Doc Smith as he's called. This is number 11 in their author bio series. Doc Smith is the person that E. Everett Evans signed his story in an earlier issue too. I showed you before. And one of the stories in here is Tedrick by, okay, so this is a Robert Moore Williams story. And Diagnosis, Tedrick by E. Doc Smith. This was one of the last series that he wrote. It was kind of a sword and sorcery in space. And this is illustrated by J. Allen St. John. And these Tedrick stories were combined into one book by Doc Smith, and then continued by Gordon Eklund and other writers. Maybe like about 4 or 5 other books in the Tedrick series. Other Worlds, number 28, April 1953. Again, the art director is Malcolm H. Smith, but the cover art and the back cover are by Robert Gibson Jones. Raymond A. Palmer has the lead-off story, and David V. Reed has a story as well. And this is number 28, April 53, and it's Robert Gibson Jones cover and Robert Gibson Jones back cover. And the inside, they do a profile, which is number 12, of David V. Reed, with no picture, no photo of him, which I wish they did, because he's a kind of a least known science fiction author. New Moon by Raymond A. Palmer, illustrated by Macaulay. It's a lead-off novelet. And this is Mishkayan by David V. Reed. This is his one part of I believe a 3-part novel that fills up most of this issue. Again, I don't have the entire run of Other Worlds. They're 31 issues. I have about I think I have about 16 of them, and so I'm missing about half. But this will just give you an idea of some of the what's in these issues and how they look. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool magazine. Now we're up to number 29, May 1953 issue. Malcolm H. Smith cover, Robert Gibson Jones back cover. So Malcolm Smith cover and Robert Gibson Jones back cover. Fritz Leiber is in here. They do a bio on number 13 on Stuart J. Byrne, or S.J. Byrne. There's a photo. And editorial by Palmer. And Byrne Power Metal, which is a story that will be serialized in some of the other issues. Continue. Number 30, June 1953. Cover is by Hannes Bach. Back cover is by Robert Gibson Jones. So that's Hannes Bach. Cover art. Number 30, June 1953 issue. And it illustrates The Thinking Cap by Robert Bloch and Robert Gibson Jones back cover. And it's nice that the number 14 of the world's biographies of authors is on Robert Bloch with a photo of him. And there's L. Sprague de Camp and Robert Bloch. This is the Power Metal Part 2 of 3, by S.J. Byrne, and the illustration. These are very delicate magazines, even just opening them up. Let me see where the Robert Bloch story is. The Thinking Cap 130. Just to show you, yeah. And The Thinking Cap by Robert Bloch, and it's a Hannes Bach illustration. So that's number 30. Number 31, this is the last issue of the first series, and it's July 1953. And the cover and the back cover are by Robert Gibson Jones, and it contains L. Sprague de Camp and James McConnell, a novel by him. And this is the last issue of the first series of Other Worlds. The front cover and the art on the back cover. And it continues part 3 of this novel Power Metal by S.J. Byrne. And also James McConnell is the number 15 on the Other Worlds author list, bio. And stories in here by various people. James McConnell's is the opening story, The Game of White. Lawrence did the illustration. And this is the end of the magazine, at least in this stage, in this format. Power Metal, that's the third part of that S.J. Byrne novel. So that's the 31 issues of Other Worlds. What would happen is that a couple of years later, or a year later, there would be a second series. In May 1955, they would start off with number 11, they would continue for 12 issues, and the second series would continue the numbering from Universe magazine. So this is, and then this issue would be a larger format. It's a pulp magazine size format. So you can see the difference in size. Okay, and the interesting thing is this issue is May 1957. It's issue number 22, and contains stories by Don Wilcox, who wrote a lot of stories for Amazing, and Marion Zimmer Bradley, and Robert M. Williams is Robert Moore Williams. The cover art is by Raymond Palmer, the editor. It's by his own self. He did the cover art. They must have maybe had this on a shoestring budget, but he brought back Other Worlds, and it's credited, the cover by Raymond Palmer, and there's an editorial, Robert Moore Williams. The interiors are different now. You have a kind of a washed out black and white photo with a shadow. It's not the magazine that it used to be. Another kind of washed out black and white photo. This isn't too old, too aged a copy, so you can see that even these photos aren't reproduced so well in this pulp paper. Falcons and their Bedla by Marion Zimmer Bradley. It was would become an ace part of an ace double, half of an ace double. And this is just to show you the difference in the second series. That went 12 issues. But the first series of The Worlds, from 1949 to 1953, 31 issues, is a really cool, beautiful little magazine to collect. And the spines, they look great on the shelf with that garish Other Worlds red and white design on the spines. And the cover art on some of them is terrific. The Hannes Bach covers, the Macaulay covers, even the Gibson Jones is really nice. It's a cool series. They had better and better writers as the magazine went on, but they still stayed to their roots with the shaver, supernatural, spiritualistic, pseudoscience stuff, mixing in with regular science fiction and fantasy. All kinds of stuff was in this pages of this magazine, but it was good stuff. You had some good authors, you had some good stories, and it was a fun magazine. Lasted 31 issues, so it lasted a while, and then it made a comeback. So it's a cool magazine to collect, and there's good stuff in it to read. So I just hope you like this look at Other Worlds. I wish I had them all, and I could show you them all 31, but I have I think I have about 16 or so of them, or 18 of them, and I showed you the ones that I have, and that will give you impetus to go out and look for the other ones if you're a collector or if you're interested. And in the meantime, I hope you saw something that you like, something that interests you. And I want to thank you for looking. Give us a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.